In every genre, games kind of have a certain style of playing it. Like in MMOs, you have to micromanage 50 things like you're playing Ultimate Custom Night, and in FPSs nowadays, you have to move around the map at a billion miles per hour like it's Quake. In the horror genre, every game has you walk around finding stuff to progress into the next area, until you eventually reach your goal. So when encountering a new horror game, that's the kind of style you're usually thinking of, and for the most part that's what it ends up being. Except for Paratopic. I discovered this game recently, and from the screenshots it looked kind of interesting. The PS2 style textures really caught my eye, and one of the key parts is that it said it was a psychological horror game. Now most recently I played I'm Scared, which was a very good psychological horror game, so I was hoping it had elements kind of similar to it. But in short, if you want me to summarize this entire video, this is the most confusing horror game I've ever seen. And by that I mean I don't quite know where they got the psychological horror from, and I don't know where they got the game quite from. That'll make sense soon. First thing to note is that this game is really short, like 50 minutes at most. And because of that, there is no save system in the game. You're supposed to play this in one sitting, and even the game tells you that. And having no save system is actually fine in this case because you can't actually die in this game. Believe me, I tried. So you can't save the game and you can't even die. That doesn't sound great so far. When you start at the main menu, all you get to see is this weird symbol. I don't really know if it means something, but hey, it looks pretty cool, I guess. That looks like something you'd put on a poster. And speaking of posters, I'd like to tell you about this video's sponsor, Displate. They're not like most other paper or wood posters where hanging them can be tricky and where you might even have to put a hole in your wall. Displate's posters are made of metal, so they're much sturdier, higher quality, and you can put them up in less than a minute. No need to drill anything. Especially since some places don't even let you drill into the wall. These use a magnetic mounting system which makes it very simple to just swap posters whenever you want. If you got different designs for different moods, you can swap them. On their website, you can choose between probably over 1 million different designs by different artists and brands. Do you have a game you like? There's designs for that. Do you like nature? There's designs for that. Do you like random abstract pictures? There's designs for that too. Displates are made in-house in Europe and they can be shipped to pretty much anywhere in the world within 4 to 5 days, so no need to sit there waiting for a month. They currently have a promotion going on until November 29th where you can get 35% off 1 or 2 designs, 39% for 3 to 4, and 44% for 5 or more designs. You can use the discount code LAMWARP to get that promotion. You can also check out this link to see all the designs that I've liked. Perhaps you might like some of them too. So check out Displate. It's worth it. But anyways, right as you start the game, you're in a hallway talking to some guy. Oh yeah, there's dialogue in this game. Almost too much dialogue for how short the game is. But when I say dialogue, I don't really mean voice acting. I mean this. That's the kind of speech in this game. Every conversation you have is like this. It almost sounds like random sounds, but if you listen closely, you can hear that the characters are saying what they're actually saying, but super modulated. I actually kind of like this effect. It fits well with the atmosphere. Atmosphere. Keep that in mind. So as a little preface, this game's description says you're smuggling contraband VHS tapes across the border, discover the remnants of illicit industry, and prepare for an assassination. So 3 completely different things somehow combine into one game. Honestly, each one of those things can be their own game with a complete story, but for some reason it's combined into one. That's fine. So you play as 3 different characters, and somehow they're all part of the same plot. That just makes it more confusing. Although I will note that it says that this is an experimental first-person horror game. So experimental leads me to believe that this was never meant to be something serious. I don't know, anyway. You're talking to this guy about those VHS tapes until he walks away into a room and you see a bright flash. I guess he got a tactical nuke. Then the intro starts, and this is the part that I think really sets the vibe. The first thing you see is something on the floor decomposing and the buildings and sky looking murky as hell. Even the stop sign being tilted gives the impression of this city being neglected, or it's just a normal day in Los Angeles. The background music really puts it together. Then you get a conversation between 2 people, probably on the phone because you can't hear one of them, and when it zooms out you see that you're in a diner with people and a gun on the table. Trying to be inconspicuous, right? I'm going to assume you play as the assassin here because I don't know who else would pull out a gun in a diner, unless you're in Texas. For some reason they make you click to load each bullet one by one, and then suddenly you're on the other side of the diner talking to some other guy. Now it seems you're playing as the smuggler because the guy says you're going to be picking up some tapes. I'm guessing this guy is your mafia boss or something because he's kind of annoying. My favorite part about this is when the camera gets a close-up of him, you can see his face is literally 2 polygons with a texture on it. And for no reason, but probably for this style, the texture fades to a low resolution and then back to a high resolution again. Then the super close-up is even funnier. Then you go back to being the assassin again, except this time the diner is empty. Maybe those guys are just apparitions. You're able to aim your sights, so the assumption is that you're going to start shooting something. When you bust through the door, you find someone, except the game cuts to show the title, and in 5 seconds you're somewhere completely different. So that was the intro to the game. You confused yet? I mean, so far the atmosphere is awesome, but when they switch back and forth between two characters, you're just like, huh? Okay, so this next part is really weird to me. You're in a room, and the only thing you can do is call the elevator. Well, I mean, you can also put out a cigarette, so that's cool. But when you call this elevator, you expect it to take like 10 seconds maximum. But no, it takes so long to get down that it's almost annoying. Plus, the door is slightly open, so when it gets close, you can literally see how slow it's moving. So my question is, why? Why make it take this slow? You can literally take a small vacation and come back by the time it gets down. The only reason I can possibly see to do this is to play the intriguing background melody to set the mood, which I suspect is probably why they did this. They also realize that it's annoyingly slow because as soon as you walk into it, you just get teleported to the floor you're going to. Thanks guys. So in this floor, you realize that this is probably an apartment building, except that this is the most rustiest, dirtiest, and saddest apartment building I've ever seen. And despite the fact that the rooms here are like 2 square feet, I still bet that this entire room costs $3,000 a month. There's a woman here that's taking a smoke break, and if you talk to her, she first thinks you're sus because she saw some people going to your apartment. But when you go in your apartment and see the tapes, she appears out of nowhere and tries to convince you to give her one. And immediately after this conversation, you just get teleported into a car going down the highway. Round of applause for that. This section is also super strange to me. So you're driving on the highway during sunset, and for some reason there is literally no one else on the road. Even the buildings you drive past don't have any lit windows. Strange environment, but again, this is probably to show you the world that you're in and how unappealing it is. The really strange part to me is, again, this section takes way too long. Like I'm talking 3 whole minutes, at least for me. And in those 3 minutes, there is nothing happening. You're just driving, and the only thing you can do is turn the radio on or off and switch the channel. Pro tip, you can actually press W to make the car go a bit faster, so that might make this a bit shorter. Oh, and you can't crash, I tried. So in this car, you can see the box of VHS tapes next to you, but eventually, if you look away for long enough, they disappear. And if you look away some more, a gun appears. And if you look away again, the box comes back. Now this is super strange, and I honestly have zero clue why that happens. But after some time, you magically get teleported into a store. This game just loves teleporting you. This store is desolate, of course, but you can make some small talk with the clerk about really random stuff. Like aliens. This guy will tell you a little more about the city. Not much though. All he'll tell you about is some random places and a restaurant that burned down. And again, after this incredibly long conversation, you get teleported to the side of the road in the dark. You open the VHS box to realize that there are no tapes in there, and it was actually daytime. Congrats again. So in this next section, you're playing as the bird watcher, and you have to take 6 pictures of birds. And specifically, you're chasing this red bird because when you look at it, it runs away. This seems like a normal park type area, except when you find a random shed that has a basement. Well shit. If you go down there, there's more stairs that will lead you to a really random observatory, maybe? I really can't tell what this is. And some of the horror part starts to creep in here because you might expect there to be some monster down here because of how rusty and dark it looks. But nope, there's literally no one down here. Anyway, you continue to chase the bird until you find a windmill right next to a cliff that's about to fall. You can even hear it creaking. Again, you can't die by jumping off. Lame. When you go by the side of the cliff, because that's the only other way to go, you get teleported back to the car on the highway. Great. So you go on a really long drive again, except this time you eventually leave the city and you can see the sky eventually get a lot darker until you can barely see anything. And then again you get teleported to the birdwatcher again who made it somewhere else. This is another part of that same forest, except this area looks a lot weirder because there's a lot of shipping containers here and even security cameras that follow you. I'm sorry, what? So you continue down the path and you'll also notice that the background music is different. It now sounds a bit more eerie while still having a calming melody. Very strange. When you make it up a hill, you'll see a small abandoned storage spot, but when you get closer, you'll see a dark figure standing in the middle of it. And if you point your camera on him, it starts to glitch out. If you get too close, it disappears with a nice little ding sound. But your camera will still glitch out if you hold it. If you hold it long enough, you get hit with the only jump scare in this entire game. And then you're back in the car. So that entire part with the containers and cameras and even the part before that with the weird shed, I think that was the discover the remnants of illicit industry part. Very strange indeed. Like, who the hell was that? Or that? After another long car ride, which this time has literally nothing outside, it just looks like you're in a Fallout wasteland, you end up back at the store. You again have a really long talk with the clerk who will tell you some more about the world. Again, not much though, he'll just tell you about a milk store, a state park, and a carnival. Which is fine, but I was more curious about the bigger questions like, why does this place look like Detroit? Anyway, after this talk, you're immediately back at the assassin who busted through that door like 40 minutes ago. Remember when that happened? This time you can actually shoot the guy. And this guy was watching a whole load of tapes. Like, a lot. Here you apparently have to put in the right tape because if you put in a wrong one, you time travel backwards. So now there's time travel, even better. After going through every single tape, you find the right one and you immediately get back to the beginning of the game with that hallway. This time the guy that got blinded in the beginning now falls out with a TV on his head. Alrighty. As he walks toward you, you realize that he's been sliced up and then he disintegrates. The TV then says, "Be seeing you, friendo." Okay, what is this, Shakespeare? You then get back to the assassin, now in the same floor as the birdwatcher was in, and with nice beats in the background. Again, the devs realize how long of a walk it is, so they fast forward again. When you make it up to the containers, you'll find a corpse stuck on some metal with a camera. I wonder who that is. The assassin calls the police, but hangs up at the end on purpose. And then the credits roll. Wait, what? That was the entire game. Again, it was only like 50 minutes for me. It's probably even shorter because I looked around more than I should have. And like the title says, I'm very much confused by this game. I would say it's definitely a good game, like I'm not going to give it a 1 star, but it's still putting my one brain cell to work. Remember, this was supposed to be a psychological horror game. But unless I don't know what psychological horror is, I didn't really see any of that. The other tags like a retro, short, and walking simulator, I definitely saw because that's really all you do in this game, just walk around places. But even just the normal horror part, there's not much of it. The only horror part is the gloomy places and the fact that you're alone most of the time. Even the one jump scare that's in the game isn't the scariest thing ever. So advertising this as a horror game is slightly weird to me. You can certainly say it is because, I mean, it's got some horror in it, but I would say that's only part of it. The main part, like atmospheric, should be the selling point. And don't even get me started on the story because I would have to go into an entire game theory episode. The main part of the story is obvious. There's these contraband VHS tapes that people want to get, and one of the characters you play is trying to get them over the border. That's only obvious because you're already told that. However, the other two characters, the assassin and photographer, I have no idea how they fit into that. My guess would be that the assassin is trying to stop this underground VHS ring, and the illicit industry that the photographer found is how these VHS tapes were made. That's all I could come up with. Anything beyond that is just a game theory. But this super convoluted story is also why I'm saying this game is confusing. It's confusing as a story and confusing as a game itself. But again, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I still recommend you try it out for the atmosphere and the vibe. Just know that it's very different from other horror games. But try it out. It's worth it. But anyways, bye.